Shrirupam tasyagrajam gurupurim maturim goshavakim Radhakundam Girivaramahorarika Madhavasham Prapto yasya Kriya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi He Guru Yanadadi Nabando Swanandadata Varanayaka Sindhu Vrindavanasya Nadavatara Rasina Radha Pranaya Prachara He Dinabandho Karunayaka Sindhu Kuru Prasadam Mai Mandamude Lakshaparade Bhupapagade Tatpada Padme Sumati Krishna Yadayadi Amana Guru Chaitanya Rasa Tatapi Janiyami Amara Prakasha Guru Krishna Rupamana Shastrera Pramane Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Karena Bhakta Gane Shiksha Guru Peta Jani Krishna Swarupa Antarayami Bhakta Shrestha Guri Rupa Naivo Parante Kashitam Kamayastaresha Brahma Ishati Vidhamidhamudasvaranta Yontar Paristarupritam Ashupam Vidundam Acharya Chaitra Pushasvaratim Vyanakti.
May I request you to check
Without serving the representative of Krishna, nobody can approach Krishna. I bow to my spiritual master, by whose profuse mercy I have received the supreme holy name, the divine mantra, the son of Sachi, Lord Chaitanya, Swarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami, and his older brother Sanatana Goswami, the supreme abode of Mathura, the abode of Vrindavan, Radha Kund, Govardhana Hill, and the desire for service to Sri Radhika and Madhava. O spiritual master, O giver of divine wisdom, O friend of the fallen, you are the giver of your own bliss, and you are the only ocean of mercy. Although dwelling in Vrindavan, you have descended for the welfare of fallen souls like myself, and you are preaching the divine love of Radha and Krishna. Please be kind upon me. O friend of the lowly, O Gurudeva, you are the only ocean of mercy. I am a dull fool and have committed hundreds of thousands of offenses. I have fallen into a dense myriad of sins. Therefore, grace me with your mercy, so that my mind may be fixed on your lotus feet and on Sri Krishna. Although I know that my spiritual master is the servant of Sri Chaitanya,
I know him also as a plenary manifestation of the Lord. Every living entity is eternally a servant of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Therefore, the spiritual master cannot be other than a servant of Lord Chaitanya. The spiritual master's eternal occupation is to expand the service of the Lord by training disciples in a service attitude. According to the deliberate opinion of all revealed scriptures, the spiritual master is non-different from Krishna. Lord Krishna, in the form of the spiritual master, delivers his devotees. The relationship of a disciple with the spiritual master is as good as his relationship with the Supreme Lord. Spiritual masters always represent themselves as the humblest servitors of the personality of Godhead, but the disciple must look upon the spiritual master as the manifested representation of Godhead. One should know the instructing spiritual master to be the personality of Krishna. Lord Krishna manifests himself as the Supersoul and as the greatest devotee of the Lord. The initiating spiritual master is a personal manifestation of Srila Madana Mohana Vigraha, whereas the instructing spiritual master is a personal representative of Srila Govinda Dev Vigraha. O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts in spiritual science could not fully express their indebtedness to you. even if they were endowed with a prolonged lifetime of Brahma, for you appear in two features, externally as the Acharya and internally as the Supersoul, to deliver the embodied living being by directing him how to come to you. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. Our only wish is to have our consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens our darkened eyes and fills our hearts with transcendental knowledge. He is our Lord birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. Is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. Shelter at your lotus feet. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma. Vandamui Savadana Mate. प्रसादे भाई ए भव तोरिया कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो जा होते कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो जा होते गुरुमुख पद्मा वाक्या चिते ते कोरिया क्या गुरुमुख पद्मा वाक्या चिते ते कोरिया क्या आरना कोरी हो मने आशा श्री गुरु चरणे रति ऐसे उत्तम गति। जय प्रसादे पूरे सर्व आशा। जय प्रसादे पूरे सर्व आशा। चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से। चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से। दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित। दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित। प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते। प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते। वेद गाय जहाँ रचरित। वेद गाय जहाँ रचरित। श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधमा जनार बंधु। श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधमा जनार बंधु। लोकना लोकेरा जीवाना। लोकना लोकेरा जीवाना। हा हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया। हा हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया। हा हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया। एबे आशगु शुक्ति भुवाना। एबे आशगु शुक्ति भुवाना। शीला प्रभुपाद पतित पावना। जय प्रभुपादा 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 शीला प्रभुपादा। जय प्रभुपादा 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 शीला प्रभुपादा। नमो विष्णु पदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमद् भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। नमस्ते जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
1 minute more, okay?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srimad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotra Sutta Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON and BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Srimad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotra Sutta Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. श्री नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तविंद की जय. श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय. श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय. श्री नवदीप मायापुर धाम की जय. श्री जगन्नाथपुरी क्षेत्र धाम की जय. गंगामाई यमुनामाई की जय. भक्ति देवी तुलसी देवी की जय. सामवेद भक्तविंद की जय. Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll sing the verse from the 12th canto of the Srimad Bhagvatam, and that comes at chapter 13, and it's verse number 18. So it's 12, 13, 18. And it goes like this. I may need a little help with the harmonium. Srimad Bhagavatam Purana Mamalam. I'll sing and then you repeat. Srimad Bhagavatam Purana Mamalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam. Yasmin Paramahamsyam Amalam Jnanam Parangiyate. Tatra Jnana Viraga Bhakti Sahitam Naishkarmyam Avishkritam. Tajtrinvan Supatam Vicharana Paro Bhaktya Vimuchyandara. And now all together. Srimad Bhagavatam Purana Mamalam Yad Vaishnavam Priyam Yasmin Paramahamsyam Amalam Jnanam Padam Giyate. Tatra Jnana Viraga Bhakta Sahitam Naishkarmyam Avishkritam. Tajtrinvan Supatan Vicharana Paro Bhaktya Vimuchyandara. One more time. Tajtrinvan Supatan Vicharana Paro Bhaktya Vimuchyandara. Srimad Bhagavatam. Please repeat. Puranam, the Purana. Amalam, perfectly pure. Yat, which. Vaishnavanam, to the Vaishnavas. Priyam, most dear. Yasmin, in which. Paramahamsyam, attainable by the topmost devotees. Ekam, exclusive. Amalam, perfectly pure. Jnanam, knowledge. Param, supreme. Giyate, is sung. Tatra, there. Jnana Vairagya Bhakti Sahitam, together with knowledge, renunciation, and devotion. Naishkarmyam, freedom from all material work. Avishkritam, is revealed. Tat, that. Shrinvan, hearing. Supatan, properly chanting. Vicharana para, who is serious about understanding. Bhaktya, with devotion. Vimuchyet, becomes totally liberated. Naraha, a person. And I'll read the translation out loud. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana. It is most dear to the Vaishnavas because it describes the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramahamsas. This Bhagavatam reveals the means for becoming free from all material work, together with the processes of transcendental knowledge, renunciation, and devotion. Anyone who seriously tries to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, who properly hears and chants it with devotion, becomes completely liberated. Purport. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is completely free of contamination by the modes of nature, it is endowed with extraordinary spiritual beauty and is therefore dear to the pure devotees of the Lord. The word Paramahamsam indicates that even completely liberated souls are eager to hear and narrate Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are trying to be liberated should faithfully serve this literature by hearing and reciting it with faith and devotion. And now I'd like to read to you from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, beginning at Madhya Lila, chapter 19. I'm starting at text number 1, and I'm going to read a few verses. It's an introduction to our going to Ter Kadamba today, which is a place where Srila Rupa Goswami spent time hearing and chanting. Text number 1. Before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the Lord enlightened the heart of Lord Brahma with the details of the creation and manifested the Vedic knowledge. In exactly the same way, the Lord, being anxious to revive the Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Krishna, impregnated the heart of Rupa Goswami with spiritual potency. By this potency, Srila Rupa Goswami could revive the activities of Krishna in Vrindavan, activities almost lost to memory. In this way, he spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. All glories to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Chandra. And all glories to all the devotees of the Lord. After meeting Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the village of Ramakeli, the brothers Rupa and Sanatan returned to their homes. The two brothers devised a means whereby they could give up their material activities. For this purpose, they appointed 2 brahmanas and paid them a large amount of money. The brahmanas performed religious ceremonies and chanted the holy name of Krishna, so that the 2 brothers might attain shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very soon. Purport. A Purushcharana is a ritualistic ceremony performed under the guidance of an expert spiritual master or brahmana. It is performed for the fulfillment of certain desires. One rises early in the morning, chants the Hare Krishna mantra, performs archan by the artik ceremony, and worships the deities. These activities are described in Madhya Lila, 15th chapter, verse 108. At this time, Sri Rupa Goswami returned home, taking with him large quantities of riches loaded in. At this time, Sri Rupa Goswami returned home, taking with him large quantities of riches loaded in boats. Sri Rupa Goswami divided the wealth that he brought back home. He gave 50% in charity to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas and 25% to his relatives. Purport. This is a practical example how one should divide his money and retire from household life. 50% of one's money should be distributed to qualified and pure devotees of the Lord. 25% may be given to family members, and 25% may be kept for personal use in case of emergency. He kept 1/4 of his wealth with a respectable Brahmana. He kept this for his personal safety because he was expecting some legal complications. He deposited 10,000 coins, which were later spent by Sri Sanatan Goswami in the custody of a local Bengali grocer. Sri Rupa Goswami heard that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had returned to Jagannath Puri and was preparing to go to Vrindavan through the forest. Sri Rupa Goswami sent 2 people to Jagannath Puri to find out when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would depart for Vrindavan. Sri Rupa Goswami told the 2 men, "You are to return quickly and let me know when he will depart. Then I shall make the proper arrangements." While Sanatan Goswami was in Gaudadesh, he was thinking, "The Nawab is very pleased with me. I certainly have an obligation. If the Nawab somehow or other becomes angry with me, I shall be greatly relieved." That is my conclusion. On the pretext of bad health, Sanatan Goswami remained home. Thus he gave up government service and did not go to the royal court. The greedy masters of his clerical and secretarial staff performed the government duties while Sanatan personally remained home and discussed the revealed scriptures. Purport. Sanatan Goswami was the minister in charge of the government secretariat, and his assistants, the undersecretaries and clerks, all belonged to the Kayasta community. Formerly, the Kayastas belonged to the clerical and secretarial staff of the government, and later, if one served in such a post, he was called a Kayasta. Eventually, if a person could not identify himself as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, he used to introduce himself as a Kayasta to get a wealthy and honorable position. In Bengal, it is said that if one cannot give the identity of his caste, he calls himself a Kayasta. On the whole, the Kayasta community is a mixture of all castes, and it especially includes those engaged in clerical or secretarial work. Materially, such people are always busy occupying responsible government posts. When Sanatan Goswami was relaxing and feeling inclined to retire from government service, many Kayastas on his secretarial staff were very eager to occupy his post. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states that when Sanatan Goswami was a government minister and the Kayastas who assisted him saw that he was reluctant to continue, they became very expert in their duties. Sanatan Goswami was a Brahmana belonging to the Saraswata Brahmana community. It is said that when he resigned, a subordinate named Purandara Khan, who was a Kayasta, occupied his post. Text number 17. Sri Sanatan Goswami used to discuss Srimad Bhagvatam in an assembly of 20 or 30 learned scholars. Bhattacharya Pandit Pish Trisha Laya Bhagavata Vishar Karena Shabhate Vishaya. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives the following commentary on the words Bhagavat Vichar, as confirmed in the Mudaka Upanishad 1.1.4 through 5. There are 2 kinds of educational systems. Read the Sanskrit. You can give it to. Give him a mic.
Dve vidye viditavya iti hasma yad brahma vido vadanti para chaiva paracha tatra para rugvedo yajurvedah samavedo tarvavedah shikshakalpo vyakaranam niruktang chando jyotisham iti atapara yayatat aksharam atigamyate.
Thank you. There are 2 kinds of educational systems. One deals with transcendental knowledge, paravidya, and the other with material knowledge, aparavidya. All the Vedas, the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda, along with their corollaries known as Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Chanda, and Jyotish, belong to the inferior system of material knowledge, aparavidya. By paravidya, one can understand the akshara, Brahman, or the absolute truth. As far as the Vedic literature is concerned, the Vedanta Sutra is accepted as the Paravidya. Srimad Bhagavatam is an explanation of that Paravidya. Those who aspire for liberation, mukti or moksha, and introduce themselves as Vaidantika, are also equal to those groups aspiring to improve religion, dharma, economic development, artha, and sense gratification, karma. Dharma, artha, kama, and moksha are called chaturvarga. They are all within the system of inferior material knowledge. Any literature giving information about the spiritual world, spiritual life, spiritual identity, and the spirit soul is called paravidya. Srimad Bhagavatam does not have anything to do with the materialistic way of life. It gives transcendental information to educate people in the superior system of paravidya. Sanatana Goswami was engaged in discussing the Bhagavat Vidya, which means he discussed transcendental superior knowledge. Those who are karmis, jnanis, and yogis are not actually fit to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. Only Vaishnavas or pure devotees are fit to discuss that literature. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam itself at 12, 13, 18. Does anybody know this verse? Let's sing it together. Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahamsamekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate Yatra Jnana Viraga Bhakti Sahitam Naishkamyamavishkritam Tachrinvan Supatam Vicharanaparo Bhakya Vimuchenara. Although Srimad Bhagavatam is counted among the Puranas, it is called the spotless Purana because it does not discuss anything material. It is liked by transcendental Vaishnava devotees. The subject matter found in Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for Paramahamsas. As it is said, Paramo Nirmat Saranam Satam Vedyam, from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.2. A Paramahamsa is one who does not live in the material world and who does not envy others. In Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is discussed to arouse the living entity to the transcendental position of jnana, knowledge, and vairagya, renunciation. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.12, Tachchadadhana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya pashantyatmani chatmanam bhaktyashuta grihitaya. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. This is not sentiment. Knowledge and renunciation can be obtained through devotional service. Bhaktya Shuta Grihitaya. That is, by arousing one's dormant devotional consciousness, Krishna consciousness. When Krishna consciousness is aroused, it relieves one from fruitive activity for economic improvement and material enjoyment. This relief is technically called naishkarmya. And when one is relieved, he is no longer interested in working hard for sense gratification. Srimad Bhagavatam is Srila Vyasadev's last mature contribution, and one should read and hear it in an assembly of realized souls while engaging in devotional service. At such a time, one can be liberated from all material bondage. This was the course taken by Sanatana Goswami, who retired from government service to study Srimad Bhagavatam with learned scholars. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Uta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The story of Rupa and Sanatan is instructive for everyone, for it's natural that one has to work in this world, and it's not easy to adjust to the world in general because it's a foreign environment for the soul, and therefore Prabhupada says that it's frustrating. And the way to come out of this frustrating environment is to gradually transfer oneself to a spiritual environment, which is marked by selfless service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Rupa and Sanatan and their trajectory are inspiring to us. They had an awkward situation, born in Saraswat Brahmin families, and then being subjected to the political situation of the times, were forced into the employ of those government officials who then would render Rupa and Sanatan's status in their society of birth to be outcasts. And so much so that they were considered untouchable. And they had full employment in the government, and they were making good money. They were quite wealthy. You can tell by how they had divested themselves of their wealth at the end by huge boatloads full of gold coins and other valuables. And when they were employed, they had internally in their own homes kept their hearing and chanting going. In fact, I had heard that they had built a replica of Vrindavan. So that was in their private residence. So it wasn't that they had forgotten their culture, it's just that they were forced to work in a particular situation, and we may be in that situation sometime too, that we have to work in an environment where people aren't Krishna conscious. And when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Ramakeli, which was not so far from where Rupa and Sanatan were, they communicated by messages, some messengers. And they didn't hear back from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so they went clandestinely to see him at Ramakeli. Mahaprabhu was performing Harinam Sankirtan there, and there were thousands of people chanting, dancing. And when they saw Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were enamored of his countenance and his spiritual potency, so much so that they decided that they wanted to be his followers. And they became a little anxious about their situation. Now they were still employed, but now their hearts had gone with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu had met them at Ramakeli and immediately recognized them as eternal associates and had initiated them then at the first meeting, giving them spiritual names, Rupa and Sanatan. Then they wanted to get free, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had sent a note or a message, and it said that just as a housewife who has an extramarital affair is is meticulous about doing her work so that nobody detects that she's thinking about somebody else. Similarly, you should do your work in the government and be dutiful. Meanwhile, you can cultivate internally your attachment to Krishna. And there's a similar instruction that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave to Raghunath Das Goswami, who wanted to flee and did flee many times. Only that time in society, in Indian society, parents owned their children, and they had every right to send people to bring them back if they tried to escape. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Raghunath Das Goswami in that situation to bide his time and don't be a crazy person in the meantime. Pretend to be cooperative or be cooperative. And when the opportunity comes, then you can go. Rupa and Sanatan were in a similar situation, and from the histories I've read, it took Rupa Goswami at least a year to divest himself of his duties. And when he had gotten free from his employ in the government, then Sanatan Goswami was left holding the bag. And he called in sick, as is mentioned here, and his employer, and we heard in context that he actually wanted to annoy his employer because he was in his good stead. In fact, the Nawab loved Rupa and Sanatan as sons. And the reason was that they were, first of all, they had such beautiful qualities. They were Vaishnavas at heart, and they also were expert at what they did. That's why they were in charge. A lot of the brahmanas who had been subjugated and put in charge because they were so expert and smart. And when the king sent his royal physician to the house of Sanatan Goswami and examined him, he found out that he wasn't actually sick. He's just sick of working. And there may come a time when one realizes that the kind of engagement they have in the material world is sickening. Even at that time, one may have to go on. There is an interim period in the practice of devotional service that despite the fact that we become enlivened, we may have to go on performing our worldly duties. After all, Jnana Prabhupada, after he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, in his heart, accept him as a spiritual master and want to participate in the mission, but he explained at that time he was still a family man with young children, and he also had a job. I did read the other day that Prabhupada had expressed to his potential employer, Bose, that I want to just go. And in the interview, Bose had said he was always very determined to do things, and once he decided, it was hard to change his mind. But he did convince Abai at that time that it would be a good idea if you want to follow the order of your spiritual master that you received, that at least you have some money in your pocket. So you can do this, and there's a good prospect for you here. You can have a franchise in my company, and if you work hard for a little while, then you'll be able to use that to fulfill the mission. And he accepted that, did Abai. And once Kadamakananda Maharaj gave a class in Vrindavan or Mayapur, I can't remember, Mayapur, and he was talking about how he had been a householder before he took sannyas, and then when he decided that he wanted to take sannyas, he had to go back and work for a few years in order to support his wife after he had left. Somebody asked me recently, had written me and said, did Prabhupada just flat leave his family, and what about that? And to some degree, Prabhupada wandered off. He had gone into more of a vanaprastha mode, and he didn't have any resources at that time. In fact, it's described in some of the histories that he had very little money and his cloth was not great. Indication that he didn't have much money. But when he did, he made a stipend for his family. In fact, that went on, and maybe still going on. I'd have to check on it, but it's gone on for many, many years under the direction of the BBT, the trust. There's always been a stipend that he set for his family, that they were paid a certain amount of money, so whenever he could. It just goes to show that maneuvering in the material world means you have to be thoughtful about it and not impulsive. And Sanatana Goswami then explained to his employer when he showed up and said, the doctor said, you're not sick, what are you doing here? And Sanatan said that I won't be able to come back to work. And then his employer said, then you can either work or go to jail. So he went to jail, and then he got bailed out because of the money we just heard about that the Rupa Goswami had left behind. And in the escape from employment, which was for Sanatan apparently a harrowing escape, he had to sneak out of the vicinity. And Rupa, first we find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, starting in chapter 19, received instructions from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He met him in Ramakeli, both of them did. And later, Rupa Goswami met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Prayag, the confluence of the Jamuna, Saraswati, and Ganga. And there he received instruction about the process of devotional service, which is recounted here in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, starting in this section where we're reading from now, which is the 19th chapter. And he told them about the various relationships that living entities have with Krishna, how to perform Vaidhi Bhakti, leading to spontaneous devotional service, and the various stages that one would progress through in practicing devotional service. So that came directly from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Rupa Goswami, who then wrote many books in order to elaborate on the subject. And those are obviously available today. I remember being at Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, where tourists come from all over the world. My Sankirtan partner there was Vichitatma Prabhu, and I was distributing books on one side of the block and he was on the other, and I kept seeing people walk by with 2 or 3 copies of the Nectar of Devotion. And I finally caught up to Vijayatatma and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, I figured out because there was a sale on Nectar Devotions, I get more points if I distribute several Nectar Devotions. It costs less, and I get more points than if I distribute a Bhagavad Gita." And I was just thinking back to how Rupa Goswami had sat at Prayag and heard the discussion of how one actually attains the spiritual world through hearing Srimad Bhagvatam in the association of devotees and practicing the tenets of Bhakti Yoga, and how he had then written about it in a comprehensive way. And then Prabhupada brought that in the summary form in Nectar Devotion. And now there were tourists who were not the most spiritually minded people I ever met, I must say, at Fisherman's Wharf. They wanted to go see Alcatraz and eat cotton candy and just walk around and look at stuff. And then they ended up with 3 copies of the Nectar Devotion from Vijayatatma. Quite a progression. And this verse today talks about the ways in which, as it says here, the Srimad Bhagavatam, here I'll revisit the verse, some very important parts of this, is most dear to the devotees. First of all, it's spotless, because Bhagavatam, as described in the 2nd verse, Dharma projita kaitavo tra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. It's a introductory verse saying that this book will not compromise. It's strictly for the description of pure devotional service. Therefore, it's called the Amala Purana. There's no sense of worldliness here. And also, it's meant for Paramahamsas. Paramahamsa is, also Hamsa is a swan, one of the metaphors related to the Paramahamsa. A swan can drink a mixture of milk and water, and only take the milk and expel the water from its beak. What do you think? What do you think? You think Haribol? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Well, I heard Bhadranyarayan Swami once say that he used to wonder about that. Was it a biological fact that could happen? And he said he met a professor at University of Michigan, and he said, "What about this metaphor?" And he said, the professor answered, "Oh yes, there's an enzyme in the beak of that bird that allows it to coagulate things, and then it can expel through those little holes the water, and it can take the solid form." I don't know how they tested that. But in any case, the metaphor stands. The idea is that we're in a world that's mixed up, matter and spirit. But the Paramahamsa is able to take the essence of life, which is Krishna Bhakti, and apply it in all circumstances. And Krishna gives the pathway to do this in the Bhagavad Gita, how to engage in your occupation but then offer it to Krishna. And there's also in the Brahma Samhita, Kurvan nirantaram karma loko yamanavartate tenaiva kamanathyayam mamparam bhaktimichyati, that everyone has to work, so while you're working you should consider offering your work to the Lord, and therefore through your works you meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the Bhagavatam, when we enter in, there's the concept that there should be no motivation. One's service to Krishna should be without expectation of getting something in return. And so the Paramahamsa lives in the world and only takes the essence of life. And what a shelter the Srimad Bhagavatam is, because generally you don't read about these principles in the Washington Post or the New Yorker or 99.9% of the books in any library. I was on a walk the other day and I walked into the Burlingame Public Library, which I hadn't been in since before the pandemic. And I just walked up and down the aisles to see what there was. And except for a book on history, which I consider dubious anyway, because people have their own interpretations of history, so you never know. Nothing looked attractive to me. And I thought, what a waste of time. I'm going to go home and read the Bhagavatam. Because everything's there. And nowadays there's tonnage of self-help books that come out, and people gravitate towards those. But what I've found is a particular algorithm in these self-help books, so-called self-help, in which by the second chapter, there's some reference to our need to act in certain ways because of our evolution from a savanna or from a single cell entity. And because of evolution, we have to think in a certain way, or we should think in a certain way. And it ruins the whole thing for me. Because once I hear that, I think, you idiots. And even I had a hearty and good-natured discussion with a famous professor from a university I won't mention because I don't want anybody tracing his name out. But I had made contact with him because I had written a book, and then there have some devotees that are enthusiastic to reach out to thinkers and say, hey, do you want to talk to another author? And I had a really nice conversation with him, but I found his conclusions to be inane, and that they trace back to theories that are untenable. For instance, that consciousness evolved from matter. But Bhagavatam is the purely theistic and very logically presented literature through which Prabhupada says in his preface, anyone can be fortified by in order to withstand the onslaught of atheism or the attacks of atheists. What's more, by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one becomes relieved from the material concept of life and develops a desire within his or her heart to serve Krishna, and then becomes happy. I was thinking this morning during our singing of the Guru Vandanam of how lucky I feel that Srila Prabhupada, representing Srila Rupa Goswami and the Guru Parampara and the Srimad Bhagavatam, has made a huge pandal tent for everyone who wants relief from the material world to come under and follow in the footsteps of Rupa and Sanatan. And it's not an empty promise, and it's not wishful thinking, and it's not self-help based on some idea of evolving from a single cell entity. But it's the pure knowledge of our identity and our relationship with Krishna. And from the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the foundation for our practices, we also have a process which has been enumerated by the great acharyas, not the least of which is Srila Rupa Goswami, who sat at Terkadam and conceived of many of the literatures that he wrote, like the Vidagdha Madhava and the Vidagdha Madhava and Lalita Madhava, Ujjvala Nilamani, and so on, which guide our way in devotional service, and that Srila Prabhupada brought us. And now we'll take a few reflections or questions. Yes?
The purport, Guru Maharaj, today's class was very practical. Thank you so much for the class. The 17th verse of the Madhya Lila 19th chapter that we read, the purport was mentioning all the Vedas come under the category of material knowledge. And I was wondering when we distribute Srimad Bhagavatam to the Indians, we often quote verse Sarva Veda Itihasanam Saram Saram Samadhrutam. Basically, it's indicating this Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedanta Sutra is sourced from the Vedas, and it's a condensed version of it, the essence version of it. So I was just having a question: how do we understand that a material source can be a source for material knowledge, can be a source for spiritual knowledge?
Yeah, so actually it's not all material. There are sections that are directives for those who live in the material world. So it's very practical. You have to see that the Vedas are a huge project because they're meant to address all human beings in their various existential states, and therefore to give facility for everyone to take up a practice. Rupa Goswami describes in the Upadeshamrita, Karmi Pya Parito Hare Priyataya Vyaktimya Yorgyaninas, starts with the karmis, Karmi Pya. And in the purport, Prabhupada describes how the karmis are also appreciated here because they're following an authorized process through which they gradually become purified. And when we come to the Upanishads, there's an essentialization of the most important aspect of all of the Vedas. It's in there, but just like if you have a tree, it's one tree, and then there's a fruit on the tree. Now if you go to the bark of a mango tree and you eat the bark, I mean, maybe you could find some flavor of the mango. Probably you'd have to do more scientific research like DNA study to find that it's related. And the whole tree has a purpose, and it's to produce a fruit. So we have the unfoldment of the tree. It's coming from the original Vedas, which are wholly theistic. They're not pointing in some other direction, like evolution from a single cell. But they're pointing towards, for instance, the Purush Sukta, which is part of the Rig Veda, which says, Purusha Vedam Gangsur Utam Yachta Bhavyam Tamrit Tatte Shashanaha Yarandati Rohati. There's a whole description there in 18 verses about how it is that all the beings came into existence in this world from the Purusha, who is Dashangulam. He's above the material world by at least 2 finger lengths. And then the rishis had performed yajna service to the Lord in their particular method. And they used the Virat, which is an expansion of the original Purusha, in order to manifest everything in the world. And we find that in the Srimad Bhagavatam as well, how Brahma manifests everything under the guidance of the Purusha. So it's all pointing back to the Supreme Person, unmistakably. And there are different modes of worship within that body, but then the summarization of the most important parts, the transcendental parts, come in the Upanishads. That's why Upanishad means now really pay attention. Now that you're done messing around with elevationism and trying to find a comfortable place in the material world, here's who you are. And if you want to see God, take a look at yourself to start with, because you're a little sample. And you can Pushani Karshe Yama Surya Prajapatya Vyuharasmin Samuha Tejo Rupam Te Rupam Kalyanatamam Tate Pashami Yosavasa Purushasomasmi. The references in the Upanishads to, okay, now let's look at the most important part of the world, consciousness, and the Atma, and then you're part of that supreme Atma, reference in the Upanishad, especially the Sri Upanishad. And then you get the Vedanta Sutras, which are a summarization of the essentialization, same thing, of the Upanishads. And then you get the natural commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vyasadeva, which is a painstaking process. Srila Vyasadeva, Vyasa means the divider or the author, the one who helps organize the Vedas in such a way that they can be consumed by people in general. And Srila Vyasadeva, Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, that particular Vyasa, our Vyasa, who had the inspiration as the literal incarnation of God to make the Vedas, first of all, available to everyone. So he divided it into 4. And one part of the Vedas is a little bit hocus pocus, so generally there's 3 that are propagated widely. And then Upanishads, and then of course we have the whole event where Vyasadeva comes to a point after he's made the Mahabharata and the other Puranic histories available. That's not redundant, Puranic history. There's a way in which he feels despondent, and then he meets Narada. He's already working on it, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Purana. And then when Narada comes, he said, better dig a little deeper. And then he goes back into Samadhi, does Srila Vyasadeva, and he comes out with Samadhi Bhashya, what you say after you've seen Krishna directly. And the soul, as described there in the chapter, Son of Drona Punished, at the very beginning, there's some very important verses leading up to the Atmarama verse. And there was Srila Vyasadeva's revelation, and also following the instruction of a spiritual master, which is be more direct and talk about the pastimes of Krishna, and then you get the Srimad Bhagavatam. And people can understand oftentimes when you describe what the Srimad Bhagavatam says was Nigama Kalpa Toror Galitam Palam Shukamugharam Rita Drava Samyutam Pipata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Mahuraho Rasikapuvi Babukaha, which is this amazing declaration that, okay, all the Vedas are there, everybody knows that, but it's a big tree, Kalpa, a taru, Galitam Palam, and it has a fruit. And what's the fruit like? It's really good. It's no skin, just all nectar. In fact, it's semi-solid. You can drink it. It's like a smoothie. And once you drink it, it's so intoxicating that you forget about the material world altogether. And you might even fall down on the ground out of intoxication. And it says, well, what happens when you get back up again? It said, have a little more. It's kind of what Huey Lewis had in mind when he wrote a song, I Need a New Drug. because all the other drugs he was naming, and anytime you hear about a new drug, it's a 2-minute commercial generally, and the first 10 seconds talks about how it might help you, and then the rest of the time, a person talking really fast and fine print going back as fast as they're allowed to legally, saying all the ways it's going to mess you up. But the Srimad Bhagavatam's not like that. It's what we're all looking for. It's the Abhishtadoham. It actually fulfills the innermost desire of the soul. And I can't remember if I'm actually answering your question now. Swami Prash, did I answer his question or not?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, you covered it.
All right. Well, that
Thank
brings
you,
us to the end of the class.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Prabhu, please go ahead. We got to go. But he had his hand up before I said it. Finish the sentence, so I'll answer really quickly. It's there in the Yantra handbook. It's like tie goes to the runner, infield fly rule.
We can take it up later, Maharaj.
Just say it before Nirkula takes advantage of your hesitation.
Okay.
Go.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj. But I would have liked a longer answer, so maybe you can
Just
decide.
let me think about it.
You can, yeah. And I think you're a very, very qualified and able person to answer this question. I have this question for a long time. And my question is that, what is more important, Nama or Bhagavat Shravana? And since you have so much taste in both of these, and in the 5 limbs of bhakti that Sri Rupa Goswami talks about, among the 64, he talks about both of these. And he also talks about Ekanga Bhakti as well, that any one of these, and he gives the example of Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadev Goswami as, who performed this Ekanga Bhakti. But then in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his instructions to Sri Sanatana Goswami in Antya Leela 470 and 71, he says that, I'm very poor in remembering verses, but Tara Madhye Sarva Shrestha Nama Sankirtana. And Tara Madhye, he's referring to in the previous verse as the Navavidha Bhakti. And then he says, Niraparadhe Nama Leile Paye Premadhana. Something like that. So here he is clearly delineating Nama as the best among the and among the 9 definitely there is Bhagavat Shravana. So I would like your thoughts and your clarification on which is more important.
We'll discuss it later, but for now I would just like to say that if that's your main conundrum in life,
it's not.
You got a good life.
It's not.
Should I chant Hare Krishna or read Srimad Bhagavatam? You're in a good situation. It's a really subtle and important question, which has perhaps a nuanced answer, or maybe it's just a simple answer. But we'll now think about it, and it'll give us fodder for more discussion, for which we do have a couple days, including today, out on the mark. Thank you very much. And I always like to say, a good hearing and chanting session is marked by coming out with more questions than answers. Because there's never an end to it. It's an eternal process. If you really hear and chant deeply, then you walk away thinking, oh, I got to answer this and I got to answer that. So I'll have to thank you for that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, does Shraddha, you want to say something first? No, go ahead. I'll do it at the end point.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for the class today. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, how are you feeling today?
Good.
One more time.
Good.
All right, so what have we won today? Do you remember from last evening? Ter Kadam and Vrindakund. Well, the good news is that the buses have arrived to take you to there. So we'll skip breakfast and just board the bus. Okay, we won't do that. So how about we board the bus at 9:05? Does that work? What time is it right? 8:35? Okay. 9 a.m. Okay. Now, a little bit for tomorrow, where we are going to Vrindavan. And as I was mentioning last night, that devotees wanted to go and explore Vrindavan a little bit more and get DT paraphernalia and all that. So I've sent out a poll last night. I'm trying to just figure out. We won't have a class tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow 5 o'clock p.m. We won't have that. Tomorrow we also won't have the morning program. We'll just board the bus and go to Vrindavan. More details of that I'll announce in the evening session. But I want to get a feel of how many want to stay in Vrindavan and how many want to come back. So there's a poll that I have put in our WhatsApp group. Okay, so if you can respond to that poll, that'll help us decide whether one bus remains there and two come back, or two remain there and one comes back, like that. Okay, so just do that.
Can you define stay?
Stay at Vrindavan?
Yeah, stay in Vrindavan.
Okay, yeah.
Forever,
thank you, Maharaj,
or
for bringing
for a
that.
little while?
Yeah, stay back. That's the right term.
Until the evening.
Until the evening, yes. Until the evening, so that you have time to explore more temples if you want to go, want to go to Loi Bazaar and do your shopping, that kind of thing. Right? But dinner prasadam will be here, ready for you to come back. So once I go to the poll, then we'll decide on what time we should come back and things like that. But we should come back in time for dinner here, because again, we have to go out in the morning the next day. Start the program, Tulsi Puja and all in the morning. Maharaj, does that explain? Sorry?
Yep, thank you.
Shraddha Prabhu, on the poll, I think it just asked if we wanted to stay back or not. I don't remember it asking like what time we would want to come back.
Yeah, so like I said, dinner will be served here at 7 p.m. So we should, maximum leave Vrindavan at 5. Make sense? Yeah. Yeah, if you want to stay back later, you can come on your own. There's no restriction of that. But as a group, we should come back at 5. And we'll see. But the first thing is yes, I'm just coming to you. The first thing is that I want to have the figures, right? So just please, before you start your breakfast, just open your WhatsApp and just respond. Haldar Baba.
For stay back, will there be a bus come back? Like what the last time for the bus to come back here?
That's what the poll's about. If you put the poll that you want to come back later, then she'll decide how many buses to have, depending on how many people, and then you can decide on the time. 7 o'clock is dinner, so hopefully you get back before then.
What time is the normal bus coming back?
We are the normal people. I'm coming back. So I think so Krishna Balaram temple is not on our itinerary for tomorrow as the temples to visit, and devotees had expressed a desire to visit that. Now the Krishna Balaram temple is closed from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. So our plan for tomorrow is to come back for dinner for lunch at one place, which is close to Krishna Balaram temple. So those who want to visit Krishna Balaram temple can go. It's a walkable distance. You can take a toto and go visit the temple before it closes, and then come back and join us for lunch later. So we'll have a wider opening for lunch, so that at least have it till 2 o'clock, from 12 to 2 lunch tomorrow there, so that you have some flexibility that you want to visit that.
What time does the bus come back?
1 o'clock the temple closes. About 11:30 is what we are planning to finish. Yeah. Okay.
And we start at what time tomorrow morning?
We will start tomorrow morning at 5:45 to board the
5:45.
to board the bus. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Why does that surprise you? Because we start Tulsi Puja here at 5:55. 5:45 is not a big deal.
We want to get to Vrindavan early because we have to be at Manan Mohan when the sun's coming up, and then we go to Imlital, and then Radha Damodar.
Correct.
And then
we come back.
Yeah. And I have to leave early because I have a meeting in Vrindavan, and so the earlier better for me. to go to as many of the places I can so I can get back to the MBT and jump on the call.
Does that answer the question? Yeah, okay.
Didn't answer your question though. What time's the bus coming back? After lunch, right?
After lunch.
For normal people. 2 o'clock. Bus leaves at 2, right? 2 p.m. for normals.
Yeah, I think Rishabh has to work. That's why he's asking.
Okay.
Yeah. No? No? Okay. Okay. Premnam. Okay, Premnam wanted. Okay. Anything else? Any other
Dear
questions?
Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Radha Damodar. If you so desire, please put the mood of Vrindavan in our hearts so that we always live there in our minds and hearts no matter where we go in the world. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. And please let us be absorbed in Srimad Bhagvatam. Everyone who agrees with these prayers in whole or in part, please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Vanchakalptabhishya kripasinabhe vachapatitanam bhavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha nantagori vaishnavini ki jai.